In this video, we're going to talk about using scientific apologetics in evangelism. And apologetics means to make a case, usually in a jury trial or a court trial in Greek. And so you make a case for Christianity is what apologetics is. And we use scientific with our organization is MIOS, and we use the scientific evidence as part of our argument for the existence of God, making our case. Oh, so here's a simple definition of evangelism: those who know telling those who don't. And I think this is something that maybe some people have a special gift for this, but I think it's something we all are called to do, to tell the people how to get to free ticket to heaven and tell them that Jesus Christ is their Savior. And for me, I did this for a long time, and one of my side jobs on the police department, I worked security 5 days a week outside in the parking lot of a church. And anybody walked through, I gave them a tract and told them about the gospel. And I did that for quite a few years. And anyway, I finally I had a heart-to-heart talk, and I sent them home with tracts and everything. I never heard anything back or anything, and so I had heart-to-heart with the good Lord, and I said, "Hey, I'd like to see some deals close on this. What do I need to do?" And so, anyway, in our church, a couple weeks later, our pastor, I guess it was our pastor, left a cassette tape out there from Evangel, which is a Dallas organization, and it tells you how to do friendship evangelism, where you take some time to get to know the person, you find out where the Holy Spirit's working with this person, and you join the Holy Spirit there. And I think before I was just going out by myself without the Holy Spirit, and I think this was a great advice. And the next week, somebody from my work gave me a CD with MP3s about apologetics, and I was real excited about that too. So driving to work, I had 45 minutes each way, and I was always listening to spiritual things. And so after that, I was listening to Evantel CDs, and I was listening to MP3s from the website where the CD came from. And so I was really excited, because before I thought the best evidence we have is, you ask me how he knows he lives within my heart. But now I know, hey, we got scientific, we got philosophical evidence, we got all kinds of evidence. And here's an interesting quote from George Gill: "The way to do evangelism today is to know apologetics. If you say you don't need apologetics to do evangelism, you haven't done evangelism in a long time." It's Jorge Gill. And I agree 100% with this guy. I think he's from the Dallas area, went to Dallas Theological Seminary, but he's exactly right. And I had another interesting job, side job, volunteering. They asked people at our church who wanted to go teach at the county jail, and they had a county jail that 5 of us went to once a week, and it was quite a big place, and we'd go to a different pod each time. There's about 75 to 100 in each pod, and there was probably 24 pods in there. And so anyway, and none of them stayed that long, so I would go in there, and what I what I did was, at first 15 minutes I gave apologetics to them and made the case. And some of the things I'm going to talk about were things that I said tonight. But anyway, I've been there for quite a while, and afterwards you have them pray and bow their heads, and you go through the gospel again and ask them to pray on their own. And anyway, while they still have their heads bowed, we have to ask them, are you making a first-time commitment? And then have them raise their hand, and you ask them if they're making a second-time commitment. Then we have to record that and give it into the chaplain. So anyway, after having doing it for several years, the chaplain says to me, "How come you're the only one getting first-time commitments?" And I said, "What? You're kidding me." And I was getting 3 or 4 a week, and nobody else was getting any, he said. And so I told me it's got to be the apologetics that I use at the beginning. And I think it's very important that we be ready to give an answer when we're witnessing evangelizing different people too. And anyway, the interesting thing is when an atheist becomes a follower of Christ, it's not based on blind faith, it's based on confident faith, and the scientific evidence and the philosophical arguments for God's existence, as well as historic evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. We're not going to talk too much about the resurrection of Jesus, but a lot of people today don't believe and Jesus even existed. And that's really sad. And all my life, all historians all believe that Jesus existed, and we're not going to go deep into it, but I'm going to talk about it. I think the reason they don't is because they think Genesis 1 through 11 is a joke, so why do you think Jesus is anything but a joke? And this is Bart Ehrman, an agnostic scholar. He attacks Christians regularly, and with respect to Jesus, we have numerous independent accounts in his life and sources lying beyond the gospel and the writings of Paul. Sources that originated in Jesus' native tongue, Aramaic, and that we can date within just a year or two of his life before the religion moved to convert pagans in droves. Historical sources like that are pretty astounding for an ancient figure of any kind. The claim that Jesus was simply made up falters on every ground. And if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, Christianity would have died within a couple years of his being on the cross, and it wouldn't have grown and gone out into the pagan world. And so here we're going to start about should we forget Genesis 1 through 11 and just preach Jesus, which a lot of people decided to do. We aren't going to try to defend Genesis 1 through 11, but all of our church doctrines are based on Genesis 1 through 11, but he says, including when Jesus referred to Genesis 1 through 11 as real history 16 times. Jesus believed as real history, and I guess some of those people have to straighten out Jesus when they see him. Here's Malcolm Muggeridge. One of the particular sins of the 20th century, which we developed to a very high level, is the sin of credulity. It has been said that when human beings stop believing in God, they believe in nothing. The truth is much worse. They believe in anything, and they'll keep believing in anything to avoid believing in God. So what is evolution? Evolution is a faith that unknown chemicals came together in an unknown way at an unknown place at an unknown time using an unknown process to produce life. And that's what they think. And a lot of people believe in evolution. Now we know in Europe it was evolution and liberal theology and the fossil record that caused them to become a pagan continent, basically. And because they're a pagan continent now, the Muslims are taking them over. And it seems inevitable right now because the only people who are going to be able to stand up to Muslims are Christians. They just don't have that many over there anymore. Here's a quote: the public has a distorted view of science because children are taught in school that science is a collection of firmly established truths. In fact, science is not a collection of truths. It is a continuing exploration of mysteries. Our planet is covered by continents and oceans whose origin we cannot explain. The origin of life is a total mystery, and so is the existence of human consciousness. And I'm not going to talk much about human consciousness, but it is a huge problem. Where did that come from? It couldn't come from rocks. And so basically, what I do in evangelism with apologetics is talk based about the theory of everything. And Albert Einstein tried to figure it out. He spent 3 years of his life trying to figure out the theory of everything, but he never did figure out the theory of everything, and nobody has a theory of everything. And when Paul, well, in Acts chapter 2, Peter talked to Jews who all believed in Yahweh and then just gave them the gospel. He had over 3,000 come to the Lord then. Paul in Acts chapter 11 at Mars Hill, he had to start because they believed in 300 gods, and he said, well, you're unknown God out there that they prayed to at an emergency, and he helped them, so they made a temple to him. And he says he's the one who created the heavens and the earth. None of their gods created the heavens and earth. And he made a great case there for God and for Jesus, and he had like at least four, maybe 5 or 6. And so it's a different culture, it's a different time. Same thing happened with Billy Graham in the 40s and 50s. He just had hundreds of first-time commitments. And slowly the first-time commitments went down in the 60s and the 70s. And by the end of the 70s, he was getting hardly any first-time commitments because all these people have been taught this bad science. This is our theory of everything. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and that's going to be the only theory of everything that anybody will ever have. And so this is evidence that I would give in the jail, and it was my favorite one, and I'd give a few more along with this, but the March 2014 edition of Air and Space magazine, the Planck telescope, News from the Dawn of Time, will a new picture of the universe first light overturn a theory that has reigned for 30 years. And so what is the theory that reigned for 30 years? It was the expansion theory for the Big Bang, that all this matter got super compressed and it exploded. But what did they find? Those more precise measurements have narrowed the range of acceptable models explaining the universe expanded, including the model of theory of inflation, the idea that 10 to the minus 35 seconds after the Big Bang, the universe became 100 trillion times from a mote far smaller than an atom to something far bigger than the Milky Way. So Einstein said it would take an infinite amount of energy to make something go faster than the speed of light. How about something that would go infinitely faster, going out there hundreds of light years out there in a tiny fraction of a second? And that's what they found with the first flash from the Big Bang. And I believe that might be good evidence. And anyway, this is Anthony Flew. He says, I now believe that the universe was brought into existence by an infinite intelligence. I believe that this universe's intricate laws manifest what scientists have called the mind of God. I believe that life and reproduction originated in a divine source. Why do I believe this? Given that I expounded and defended atheism for more than a half century, the short answer is this. This is the world picture as I see it that has emerged from modern science. So Anthony Flew was a debater. He debated all kinds of creationists, and he finally got new evidence, and he said it's overwhelming evidence for a divine source. I don't know if he got saved and trusted Jesus, but he stopped believing in evolution. Dr. Rosalind Pickard, I once thought I was too smart to believe in God. Now I know I was an arrogant fool who snubbed the greatest mind in the cosmos, the author of all science, mathematics, art, and everything else there is to know. Today I walk humbly, having received the most undeserved grace. So she got saved. She got a ticket to heaven, and she realized that, but she realized that she was a fool. The Bible says only fools believe that there is no God, and I think she validated that in this statement. These numbers represent the maximum deviation from the accepted values that would either prevent the universe from existing now, not having matter, or be unsuitable for any form of life. I'm just going to give you a few of the fine tuning of the universe. The ratio of electrons to protons, the max deviation is 10 to the 37th power. Ratio of electromagnetic gravity, 1 to 10 to the 40th power. That's 40 zeros behind the 1. Expansion rate of the universe, 1 and 10 to the 55 power. The mass density of the universe is 1 and 10 to the 59th power. And cosmological constant, 1 and 10 to the 120th power. So this means, let's say, there's 10 to the 80th power of atoms. So that would mean the max deviation, you take one atom out of the universe or put an extra one in, everything would stop. And so all these things, and actually I have a couple more pages of these, but I gave you a few just to show the fine tuning of the universe is amazing. Paul Davies, there is for me powerful evidence that there's something going on behind it all. It seems as though somebody has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. The impression of design is overwhelming. So if you have an open mind, you can see design. If you have eyes to see and aren't blinded by the lies of evolution, you're going to see design, and the fine-tuning numbers point to something going on behind it all. It points to the God of the universe. John O'Keefe, NASA astronomer, we are by astronomical standards a pampered, cosseted, cherished group of creatures. If the universe had not been made with the most exacting precision, we could never have come into existence. It is my view that these circumstances indicate the universe was created. It points to a creator and not time plus chance. True science points to God and not away from God. In fact, modern science first flourished because of the Christian biblical worldview. Modern science has given us two discoveries that point to God. The discovery of the universe had a beginning, the fact that our universe is finely tuned for life. And the greatest scientists, one of the most responsible for the greatest discoveries, were all creationists. And what do they do with the fine tuning? They come up with the multiverse idea. And they said, well, if there's trillion other universes out there, the odds are maybe one would be fine-tuned. And he says to postulate a trillion other universes rather than one God in order to explain the orderliness in our universe seems the height of irrationality. The multiverse theory, somewhere within the quantum foam of existence, amongst the very building blocks of reality, there is a universe where you are Batman. Well, there's no proof of any other universes out there, and I don't believe there are any, and even if there were, that wouldn't be able to explain the fine-tuning we have in our universe. The beginning of the universe seems to present insuperable difficulties unless we agree to look at it frankly supernatural. That's Sir Edmund Eddington. I believe in God. It makes no sense to me to assume the universe and our existence is just a cosmic accident, that life emerged due to random physical processes in an environment which simply happen to have the right properties. And the James Webb confirms there's something seriously wrong with our understanding of the universe. I keep hearing new things, and recently they said, well, it's got to be at least twice as old as we thought, because these old galaxies are don't look old. And plasma, it all points to plasma. I say it's ionized gas superheated over 100 degrees Celsius, electron strip of the atoms. Plasma is a very good conductor of electricity. It is effective by magnetic fields, has an overall neutral range. Plasma, like gases, has an indefinite shape and an indefinite volume. Jake Herbert. The real issue is, do the laws of physics and chemistry in our universe permit life to come from non-life? All of our scientific observations indicate the answer is no. Matter is taken for granted. The law of conservation of energy, together with Einstein's equivalent of matter and energy equals mc squared, states that the sum total of all energy in all matter on our universe is constant. There is thus no scientific explanation for the origin of matter and energy, and it's therefore necessary to assume that all energy must have existed before the supposed Big Bang, and it all existed in the hands of the Creator God. Atoms and God's order and the fundamental building block of all substances. Atoms had to be there before anything. And there's 10 to the 80th power of atoms in the universe. Everything we observe, from plant life, stars, animals, rocks, air, and water, virtually everything is composed of naturally occurring building blocks known as atoms. Order starts with atoms and the subatomic particles that comprise them. This orderliness is not a random or haphazard assemblage of particles happened by accident or spontaneous organizing without an intelligent cause. Looking into the nature of atoms, creation is clearly seen. When God created, he brought order into the universe in the smallest things, for God is not the author of confusion. Here's an atom has electrons and neutrons and protons in the nucleus in the middle, but one important thing that really doesn't make sense is the speed of the electrons. They say that the electrons spin at thousands of meters per second, maybe millions of meters per second. And I've heard it estimated they go at half the speed of light. So they're spinning at an unbelievable speed, and you can't see them at all. You just kind of see a cloud around them. And Max Planck, we got the Planck telescope from, is a man who's devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter. I can tell you as a result of my research about atoms this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates, exists by virtue of a force which brings all the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious, intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter, and that's God. And just everything in the universe, when you look at it close, everything on earth, all life is amazing, pointing to intelligent mind. And I think the atom and its strong nuclear force points to a strong creator God of infinite power. The destruction of Hiroshima was caused by half a gram of matter being converted to energy, which is the equivalent to the weight of a butterfly. So this is the power of atoms and just atoms, the amount that make up a butterfly, that much weight. And so they separated the atoms, and this caused this huge explosion. I think it killed 140,000 people. So atoms are beyond amazing, and how they got there, they only could have gotten here by a creator God. DNA, let's talk a little bit about DNA next. The theory of evolution mandates mathematical probability. The probability of just one DNA arranging itself by chance has been calculated to be 1 in 10 to the 119,000. The entire visible universe is 10 to the 28 inches in diameter. So the chances of DNA arranging itself are beyond, way beyond impossible. Mathematician says 10 to the 50th is the limit. Anything over that is impossible. And if we could get an AI to recite all the proteins in a human DNA, ACGT, in a way that they are in the genome, so reading it from the genome, how long do you think it would take to recite the genome at a rate of 100 letters a minute? This is going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is an interesting question, and I don't think anybody knows it, but it's 57 years to go at that rate, because there's 3.2 billion letters in our DNA. It's just not going to come together by chance. Yep, that's it. Amino acids randomly forming themselves into proteins to create life, about 1 in 17,000 in a million, and about 100 zeros after that. Thought you should just know. So you're saying there's a chance. The unrealistic atheist fool thinks that there's a chance that it came together by chance, and that's just amino acids that make the proteins. So they have to come together first, and then the proteins have to come together. This is the overall time frame implied by the mitochondrial DNA, fits 6,000 years back to the creation of Adam and Eve. And this is studying mitochondrial DNA. This is what you get from your mother. And they were able to look at it. And of course, science doesn't talk about it. The news media doesn't talk about it. But the creation scientists talk about it. And it's a fact. And so humans just couldn't have been around that long. I build molecules for a living. I can't begin to tell you how difficult that job is. I stand in awe of God because of what he has done through his creation. Only a rookie who knows nothing about science would say science takes away from faith. If you really study science, it will bring you closer to God. That's James Intour. He's a Rice University professor. Here's the probability of getting 5 royal flushes in a row, a huge number. And I played uh, uh, poker a lot. I never saw anybody get a royal flush. So the odds of that happening are just astronomical. And the probability of, the gain is somehow rigged if that happens. The probability of functional sequence of amino acids is in several known proteins arising from chance is 1 in 10 to the 53. The probability of a functional simple cell to arise without intelligent design, given all the ingredients, is 1 in 10 to the 57,800. That's way beyond impossible. Jeff Tompkins from ICR, the biggest problem for evolution, how did life start? Because you need DNA to make proteins, you need DNA to make RNA, you need RNA to make proteins. DNA tells RNA how to make protein, so it's worse than what came first, the chicken or the egg. Anything is missing there, it's just not going to work. And it's amazing. DNA is truly amazing. They used to think that that's the only thing it did was code for proteins and the rest was junk. Now we know at least 80% of it is functioning and sending out message to the cells and to other cells. And what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, I think the DNA in the cell came first. We don't have a single example in history of science in which information has ever come from anything other than intelligence. There is no property of physics or chemistry that can account for the information we see in DNA. That's Stephen C. Myers. So a hot rock did not create all life. Just the DNA is beyond amazing, all that it does. And it's called information because, like the molecular machines they got inside, it helps them go together and then gives them information of what to do and how to build bridges and how to take everything. It's all in the DNA, and that's information when it can send a message and something can receive it and do something with it. So it's information, but for the fools, they say it's impossible. That's not information. The complexity of one cell shows how silly the theory of evolution is. If a part of the cell did not work, it would die. And what evolved first? So the evolution, the greatest lie ever told by science. It's got all these different parts inside there. It's got the molecular machines. It's beyond amazing. It's like a huge factory inside there. You can see all the things. I'm not going to read them, but we're going to talk about flagellin here in a minute. Cells are made up of thousands of components. One of these components is protein. Proteins are large molecules based on a chain of amino acids. In order to get a protein useful for life, the correct amino acids must be linked together in the right order first. And we talked a little about that before. How easy is this? And does it happen naturally? It turns out that this is not an easy process. There are large hurdles that evolutionary process must overcome in order to build a biological protein. It just is never going to happen. The fool thinks it can happen, but we don't think it. We'll talk about the flagellum, and cells have flagellum to push them around. And the flagellum is a little motor-driven propeller, and DNA tells it how to work, that sits on the back of certain bacteria and drives them through their watery environment. It spins at 100,000 RPM and can change direction in a quarter of a turn. We don't have engines that can go anywhere near that. And turns in a quarter of a turn, that's amazing. The intricate machinery in this molecular motor, including a rotor, a stator, O-rings, bushings, and a drive shaft, require the coordination interaction of approximately 40 complex protein parts. If any part is missing or not available in the right proportion, no functional flagella will form. The cell won't be able to go around and it will die. A small iPhone app has about 50,000 lines of code. The smallest bacteria has around 1 million lines of code. No one would be absurd enough to suggest that the code in the iPhone generated itself. And it wouldn't happen in the bacteria either. Mutation and natural selection, these are the gods of evolution. Mutations are exorbitantly degrading our genetic information, 100 or 300 mutations per person per generation. That's passed on in to the next generation. The decrease in viability is 1 to 2% per generation, and that's a huge problem. If you're going to go back thousands of years, they'd be extinct over 100 times. But anyway, natural selection cannot reverse or even stop this process. Almost all individual mutations are only slightly deleterious. It is a the accumulation that does the damage. With mutations accumulation, the extinction rate is just slightly longer than 100 generation. Genomes are continually deteriorating, not getting better. So they say 100 generations. We're getting close to 100 generations now, I believe. Here's Michael B. He notes that the Linsky experiment covers 60,000 generations of E. coli bacteria and the equivalent of 1.5 million years of human evolutionary history. Yet for all of mutations observed, there are no innovations like the ones needed to produce the wonders of biology that we know. De-evolutionary mutations can help organizations, but they can't build anything. The real science uprising will come when thoughtful lay people realize they've been fooled on this point, and a range of others crucial to know we understand of our own origins. Lay people, I'd call them fools again. But so just a lot of people will say small mutations will eventually add up to a big one. No, they won't, and they never will. And we don't see it happening in the world today. And they did this experiment, and they didn't see anything close to what was needed for evolution. Charles Darwin insists to suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances, could have been formed by natural selection. Evolution seems, I freely confess, absurd to its highest degree. And he was right about this. He later writes in the book, he says he believed that bacteria, they grow some eyes, and they had natural selection, and that started the natural selection going. But now we know from bacteria that that's not going to happen, Charles, and it's just got to be absurd in the highest degree to think that the eye has 130 million light-sensitive cells and 400 million nerve endings. In order for the eye to work, it had to be all put together at the same time and at the same place. There's absolutely no room for it, nor any time for evolution. So the eye is great argument against evolution. The whole human body is an argument. It is not a matter of politics. I simply do not understand chemically how macroevolution could ever happen. That's James Tour again. And all point mutations that have been studied on the molecular level turn out to reduce the genetic information, not increase it. So there's huge problems with this whole idea of some bacteria evolving into a multi-cell being and doing all this other stuff. Well, it's just not ever going to happen. Scientific theories versus observations. Fact, DNA is lost in each and every generation. Where's the evolution in that? The human brain has 100 billion neurons. Each neuron is connected to 10,000 other neurons. Sitting on your shoulder is the most complicated object in the known universe. And Michael Kaku. And anyway, it is. It's amazing. And those 100 billion connected to 10,000, the connections are all microprocessors. They aren't just little connectors, and each of the 100 billion has 10,000s of those. His whole brain is beyond amazing. Another one from Michael Kaku. The most complex object in the known universe, brain, only uses 20 watts of power. It would require a nuclear power plant to energize a computer the size of a city block to mimic your brain, and your brain does it with just 20 watts. So if somebody calls you a dim bulb, that's a compliment. So no sane and rational person finding a Rolex watch on a desert dune would ever suggest that it marvelously mechanism invented itself, created itself, and assembled itself without the aid of intelligence. So this is the argument for design. And I think the Rolex watch would be a lot more likely to fall together than from sand than a human body from sand. And yet, supposed intelligent men speculate that the same ideology, believing that we were somehow created and assembled without the aid of any intelligent creator, think again. The intelligent men, the fools, think that. Nathaniel Jeanson, Darwin gave a test for evolution. He said, if you find some species, some part of species out there that can't be built step by tiny step, then my theory is a failure. So by Darwin's own pen, evolution should be rejected. We showed you so many things, the human eye, the human brain, just everything. And he thought it could be and just had crazy ideas, thought cells were super simple, but it's just not going to happen. Evolutionists try to focus on similarity. They find these similarities, and creations focus on differences. And they say similarity shows common ancestor, similarity shows common designer. And God created man in his own image. That's a crazy thing. It just couldn't happen by mutations. This is a better explanation, common designer. Evidence for a worldwide flood, fossils of fish swallowing fish, buried and fossilized, must have been quite rapid to have preserved a fish in the act of swallowing another fish. Thousands of such fossils have been found. And so they're all rapid burial, and they got soft-bodied jellyfish in there. And Darwin said if there were soft bodies in there, that would prove his idea wrong. And just so many things else. And there's clams and different animals in a mass grave that were buried there catastrophically. The evidence for a worldwide flood is overwhelming. And we regret to inform you, backpedaling the truth into the future department, throughout the 20th century, human footprints have been found in supposedly ancient rock, somehow with dinosaur prints. So they give some more evidence. I'm not going to go into it then. And a frog turning instantly into a prince is called a fairy tale, but if you add a few billion years, it's called evolutionary science. It's foolish science is all it is. And just this is great evidence. We had a speaker came and talked about footprints around the world, and we got some in Glen Rose, Texas. Niall Eldridge, Darwin, prophesied that future generations of paleontologists would fill these gaps by diligent search. 120 years of paleontological research later, it has become abundantly clear that the fossil record will not confirm this part of Darwin's prediction, nor is the problem a miserable, poor record. The fossil record simply shows that this prediction was wrong. They try to squeeze transitional forms in there. They can't do it. Darwin expected to see all these tiny changes all documented. We don't see tiny changes happen to anything in the world today. That's just a crazy idea that you don't find it in the fossil record. People who trusted the science not only learned that the science can be wrong, they also learned that science can be faked and they can be tricked into almost anything with that fake science. And that's true. When you don't believe in God, you believe in anything and you follow the fake science. Just the facts about the age of the earth, we'll talk about them Hundreds of scientific dating methods limit the age of the universe to thousands of years, not billions of years. Rapid decay rate of Earth's magnetic field, which I believe is the best evidence we have. It can't be more than 10,000 years old. 8,000 is getting a little risky. Carbon-14 content in fossil coal and diamonds. And diamonds are the oldest thing. Coal has equal amount everywhere. It shows that it's all buried at the same time. Rapid rate of helium escape from minerals. And so helium shouldn't be found in any minerals, but we find it if they're billions of years old, but we find it in all of them. And that means they probably were created at the flood. Lack of erosion of soil layers between strata and the strength of Mercury, Uranus, and Neptune's magnetic field. They shouldn't have any magnetic field, but they do. Comets disintegrate too quickly, change in size of color of Saturn and Neptune's ring, and that's going on a lot lately. Intact bacteria in ancient salt and amber, and soft tissue with dinosaur and other fossils, little variation in mtDNA and Y chromosomes. Fossils lack amino acid and resmisium. So Earth's magnetic field is getting weaker. A million years ago, the magnetic field would have been strong enough to rip the iron from your blood. Based on the observed rate of our shrinking sun, 100,000 years ago, life of any form could not have existed. The sun would have engulfed the earth only 20 million years ago, but the earth is 228 times older than that. Right, so it's shrinking at a rate of 5 feet per second. It's not the sun, the ball probably isn't, but it's the corona on the outside, the plasma field that's formed there by a magnetic field created by the sun. And so supposedly internal fusion and causes the plasma and the magnetic field somehow, but it's just not possible, and I got a much better explanation. Solar astronomer John Eddy commented, I think he backed off of it later, but he had a great comment in the talk. I suspect that the sun is 4.5 billion years old. However, given what some new and unexpected results to the contrary and some time for some frantic recalculations and theoretical readjustments, I suspect that we could live with Bishop Ussher's value for the age of the earth and the sun. That's about 6,000 years. I don't think there is much in the way of observational evidence to conflict that. And I think he told the truth there and kind of let it out. I don't think you'd get him to say it again, but he let it out there, and that's the truth. There is no observable evidence. Brian Thomas from ICR, if our universe were billions of years old, we would see countless millions of supernova remnants from all the stars that have died over eons, but we don't. We see about enough of those supernova remnants for about 6,000 years. Robert Jastrow, I like this guy. American astronomer and physics cosmologist. For scientists who live by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He's about to conquer the highest peaks. He has pulled himself over the final rock. He is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. So the Bible had the truth. They thought they had the truth, but they finally came to the conclusion that the Bible has the truth. Nuclear physicists declare science will never contradict the Bible. The final arbiter of any theory must be based on the strength of the description of the physical reality, he said. It is in this report that the theory of evolution fails dismally. He supports Genesis creation, arguing that the evolutionary worldview fails dismally in the description of scientific evidence. Here's Lee Strobel looking at the doctrine of Darwinism, which undergirded by my atheism for so many years. It didn't take me long to conclude that it was simply too far-fetched to be credible. I realized that if I were to embrace Darwinianism and its underlying premise of naturalism, I would have to believe that nothing produced everything, non-life produced life, randomness produced fine-tuning, chaos produced information, unconsciousness produces consciousness, non-reason produces reason. The central pillars of evolution and theory quickly rotted away and then exposed to scrutiny. He discovered the truth about evolution. There's huge problems with evolution and the fossil record with Lyell. Here's the fake that people will make when you witness to them. They realize there's no observable evidence of evolution. So it's not going to be easy to do, but this is something that we all got to be ready to give an answer and tell them that their ideas are foolish, but try to do it in a very nice way. And with the friendship, evangelism, you get to know the person, you find out kind of what they believe, and you slowly introduce them to the truth and try to do it in a loving way. So that's the end of our talk for this month.